Believe it or not, it's 30 years since the late, great Shane Warne bowled what became known as the ball of the century, dismissing Mike Gatting at the Old Trafford Ashes Test.
As far as
This
we're all
is the
concerned,
moment
we look forward to this.
Yes, this is the moment we've been waiting for.
Shane Warne coming on and taking off his floppy hat to reveal a shock of blonde hair.
Was the first test of the Ashes series, 1993.
An earring in one ear as well.
Australia had only managed 289, and we
I haven't got a ponytail
felt
there.
all was going to plan. That first innings at Old Trafford. Then Merv Hughes and his handlebar moustache dismissed poor Athers.
He hasn't got a ponytail, he's got these new shave jobs, a number 2 or 3 razor around the back and rather more hair on top.
I knew that I had little cause to fear their young leg spinner.
I just wonder, Trevor, there must be, I would think, a little bit of pressure on young Warne's shoulders here, because he'll know that his team are expecting him to come on and take some wickets here, or at least turn the ball.
Well, if he doesn't turn the ball, England will have a very good time indeed.
At first the ball
And here
looked
comes
straight enough.
Shane Warne.
I had it in my sights.
Off only 2 or 3 paces.
But such was its rotation that it swerved out to the right.
He bowls and
I thought, well, that's a leg break. That's easily defended. So I stuck my left leg out and jammed my bat against it.
Gatting is taken on the pen, he's bowled.
Ball it span obscenely, and out of the rough it jumped. Veered back across my bat and pad, clipping my off stump.
Well, Gatting's still standing there, he can't believe it, but that must have turned a very long way. We haven't got a view of this, but it took his off stump. Gatting can't believe it.
It was jiggery, pokery, trickery, jokery. How did he open me up?
That is Shane Warne's first delivery in a test match in England. Mike Gatting is still walking off now, shaking his head. He just can't believe it at all. Bowled for 4.
Who is this nobody making me look a buffoon? Like an accident-prone balloon.
Tossed up and pitches around about outside the leg stump and turns absolutely. That turns feet.
That was a Jaffa.
And it's taken the top of the off stump.
That was an absolutely beautiful delivery.
Well, he's got a huge smile on his face.
If it had been a cheese roll, it would never have got past me.
That's unplayable.
It was jiggery, pokery, trickery, jokery. How did he open me up?
And that, I'm sure, will send a shockwave right through the England dressing room, because that didn't pitch in the rough, that turned off the pitch.
I might as well have been holding a cob of corn. Jiggery, pokery, who is this nobody making me look so forlorn? I hate Shane Warne.
That was a glorious ball.
That's how it happened 20 years ago. And before we talked to both Mike and Shane about it, I to say what you said 20 minutes ago, Michael Vaughan, about the effect that one ball had on English cricket.
Well, first and foremost, at least you've had a song written after you. And the cheese roll. I mean, if it was a cheese roll, you wouldn't have missed it, would you?
I was actually going to ask Warney how he would have played it, actually, or even you yourself. I mean, having seen it.
Well, I'm telling you what, Gar, what I've been thinking about for the whole day is, if you'd have played that ball any better, we as players and England supporters may not have had to go through the turmoil of the next 13 years where Warney just destroyed everything that moved in front of him. If you'd have got your pad out to it or swept it, you were a good sweeper of the ball.
It was the first ball, mate. Didn't your teacher ever tell you just to have a look at the bowler, see what it was doing, what the bounce of the pitch was like, etc., etc.?
You're facing a young spinner who's not bowled it. Get after him.
I feel we should bring this young spinner into this conversation. Have you ever been asked, Shane, how you would have played that delivery?
No, I haven't. All I can say is I'd like to thank Mike for playing it so well, because I've watched it thousands of times, and if he didn't play it so beautifully, it wouldn't have happened. So thank you, Mike. I would have tried a big mow over cow corner probably and top edge it straight up in the air, I reckon.
How many times have you watched it? You've seen that ball thousands of times, have you?
Well, I don't know about thousands of times, but I've definitely seen it a few. And I every time someone tweets it to you, or it's on some of the sporting programs and things like that, and if you're watching those programs having to be on, you can't, I mean, it just feels. Sometimes it feels like it wasn't me just watching it.
It was.
Sort of had that,
It was you. And I tell you what, you would have thought after the amount of times we've been seeing it, I'd have actually did it once out of the 1,000 times I've seen it.
I think you play it better and better every time I watch it, actually.
Warney, tough as it.
Hello, Tuffers.
Hello, mate. Yeah, I mean, most spinners, I was playing in that, most spinners try to turn it sort of the width of the bat, but you managed to turn that the width of gat. How did you do it? And that's a long way to go, I can assure you.
Thanks,
Be
Cat.
tough to bowl to him now, I reckon. Be tough to bowl to Gat now. I don't think he would have missed it these days. But I think you're right, Tuppers. I think when you do come on as a spinner, you just try and land it.
What did you know about him, Mike, as you were facing it? As you just said to Michael, you're taught to look at that first ball and see what it does and suss the bowler out. What did you know about him going into that Test series?
Well, not a great deal. He'd played in a couple of Test matches overseas, and they said he turned the ball a bit. We'd seen a few videos, but nothing of detail. But we knew he had a good leg break. He turned a bit, and he bowled a googly, which was supposedly easily seen. But his big weapon was his flipper he had, and a good toppy. And that's really all we knew about it. And of course, when he turned up and took the cap off, you're just thinking, okay, well, not seen this guy before. What do you do? Had it been a half volley, I'm sure we'd have tried to hit it. But it actually sort of came out of his hand so well on a reasonable length, and it did have some revs on it. You could see, and the way it dipped in, you just thought, what was it going to do? And if you look at the keeper, I keep seeing all these pictures of the bail being off, but you see where Ian Healy is. He's still down the leg side, expecting it to do the same thing I am, which is actually probably go on with the arm or just turn a little bit, which we got covered, but we didn't either of us have it covered for it sort of turning as sharply as it did. So, we knew nothing about the bloke, but we certainly did. And the only nice thing about it is he didn't turn into a surfy about 2 months later and get no more wickets. And fortunately, we only get 708 Test wickets and probably been the best bowler of all time. So I don't feel that bad about it now.
Yeah, just on the modern game, if a young player comes into, play against the England side, they have so much footage, don't they? It's all been kind of kept at Loughborough, so there's no real hiding place. A young player that comes in, you've basically seen 10, 15 overs of what he can deliver before you face him. Exactly how much did you see of Warney? And what kind of quality was it?
Nothing.
We saw nothing of Warney at all. We did see just the odd clip of video because he was bowling in, I think, India or West Indies or somewhere, and he was a young fellow who was just coming on the scene. But, even if you saw all the footage of it, I still to this day will say that he couldn't have pitched it in a better place if he was going to turn it that much, because it didn't actually hit the off stump, it just clipped the bail and it just took it off up into the air, and so you didn't hear the death rattle. That's why I stood there more than anything. I thought Ian Healy had kicked the bails off trying to scamper back to the offside after it turned so much. So I'm just looking at, because only one bail came off and you didn't hear anything. And I got the usual...
It's your face on it when you look back.
Oh, mate.
It's a picture.
Well, especially when Heels has asked you to leave, like they always do in the good Australian fashion. And Warney was up the other end. I think he was probably just as... I don't know. He just looked and just couldn't believe it. And I couldn't believe it either.
Warney, had you ever bowled a ball like that in junior cricket or state cricket?
I think that, look, without trying to sound like a big head, I'd bowled a few of those deliveries in New Zealand just before we'd got to England, but they didn't take any wickets. They beat the bat. We played on some wickets there that turned a fair bit, and they beat the bat but never hit the stumps. And I think that's one of the things I can say it was actually a fluke. It was just a fluke. I never did it again first ball in a spell. I never ever did it again. I said I'd like to think I've bowled some of those deliveries, and I think as the years went, playing for 20 years and 15 years after that delivery, I got a few wickets that were similar. I remember a Chanderpaul one. Strauss in Melbourne was a pretty good one. There was a few good ones, but it was never first ball. And I think that was, I suppose, was just as good as he could actually ever bowl a leg break. It drifted just as much. It just spun enough to hit the stumps and just flicked the bail. But I bowled probably 20 of those deliveries that spun further than that and missed the stumps or missed the outside edge. So that's why it was a fluke.
How did you feel, Shane? Australia had batted first, hadn't they, in that Test match? But how did you feel as you were about to bowl your first ball in a Test match in England in an Ashes series? Because obviously
he was hungover. What are you on about? He was hungover, having been out with Merv the night before. Didn't think they were going to get bowled out that quickly.
But the image that then surrounded Shane, obviously through the coming years, is of such confidence of a man who had this hex over all batsmen because of your immense skill, Shane, of immense confidence, and yet here you are, fresh-faced kid in your first Ashes series. So I do wonder what you felt like before you went in for that first ball.
Well, my confidence wasn't an all-time. It wasn't that high at going into that first Test match. I remember we played at Worcestershire in a county game before that, and I think Graham Hick hit me for 13 sixes and made 200.
Ooh.
And the day before, we didn't bat that well. I think we made 200 in total, but I had to go out the next morning and bat, and I ran Craig McDermott out too, ran him out. And so when we get in there, England actually got off to a good start, so I was quite nervous. And I actually rushed to get the first delivery out the way. I haven't seen the footage of what was leading up, when you first start and they throw the ball. I haven't seen that footage, but in my head, I remember getting the ball. I think I bowled one, maybe two warm-up balls to, I think, Merv or Brendan Julian at mid-off or mid-on. And then I just got the ball back and started walking in. I didn't sort of pause or anything like that. I just wanted to get it out the way. But, the way that my script writer works, he landed the perfect leg break.
Warnie,
so I was pretty happy.
Just a quick one.
With a hangover.
I'm glad somebody was.
With a hangover from the night before, because Gat was right. I was out with Merv the night before till quite late.
Oh, that makes it even worse, Gat. You got bowled out by someone that was hungover.
Well, he was probably quite relaxed by his bowling that one, I tell you.
But Warnie, just whenever you bowled, I mean, you see loads of young kids come in and try and bowl leg spin, off spin, left arm spin, and a lot of the kids, they will get nervous before the bowl. In every game, did you get nervous, even towards the end when you were retiring?
I got. I was confident in what I had to do, no matter who was batting. And some days I'd smash you all over the park, and other days, it'd be your day. But I was always confident that whoever was down the other end, I could get them out. But I always had a bit of nervous energy rather than anxiety or nerves. It was more of a bundle of energy. I just wanted to get out there on the hand and let's get into it. And so it was more of an excitement and a bundle of energy, and it wasn't so much a nerves, but you always get a bit of that, there's that feeling of anticipation of what's going to happen. I think that's why sport's such a beautiful game, no matter what the code, is when you walk through the gates, no one's really sure of what's going to happen. And I think that's what gives you that buzz, that rush, that adrenaline pumping, and that anxiety, not anxiety, but that, come on, let's get into it. And that's, I always felt that wherever I was walking out, I was just super excited, but I was also a little bit, I was on edge a little bit because I didn't know what was going to happen. But I was always, when I had the ball in my hand standing at the top of my mark, I was confident that I could bowl a good enough delivery that was down there. I'd hopefully have more patience than them, and if they whack me for a few six, okay, eventually I'll get you out. That was just my train of thought. So I suppose for young spinners out there, the biggest message I can have for them, and it's sort of a long discussion, this about, people ask, where are these leg spinners? Where are the young spinners? Where are they all? And I think what happens is that they all want to bowl spin around 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Then they realise it's quite difficult. And then what actually happens is they get whacked for a few sixes, bowl a double bouncer, their mates take the mickey out of them. They need a new ball because one's been hit down the road or into a tree somewhere. And then they start. And then the captain and the coaches want the medium paces to bowl with a ring field and be more economical. So they lose heart. They're not encouraged enough to keep at their craft and to keep practicing. So what happens is, the things I've seen is around 16, 17, if they're not encouraged, they walk away from the game or become batsmen or they take up another sport. That's why we're not seeing spin bowls. It's not through a lack of people wanting to bowl spin or having heroes around the world with all the different spinners, whether it be Graham Swan or Daniel Vettori, whoever it might have been, Mushtaq, Saqlain, myself, Murali, whoever it was. I think we were playing enough and people were watching enough to want to be a spin bowler. But as I said, for the reasons I just said, I think they lose a lot of interest because of the way they're coached and captained at 16, 17.
And did the Ashes, Warnie, always sort of bring that passion out in you that little bit more? It seemed to be from the sidelines.
The Ashes to me was everything. I mean, there's, of course, Australia, India, all the other series were important. They always were every time you played for Australia, no matter who the opposition was. But the Ashes, I just think because we both like to take the mickey, we both love the banter, we all like that sort of stuff. And there's something special about an England tour. There's no air travel. And I can't stress enough or underestimate, they underestimate that enough, that gelling together as a group of 16 guys, travelling around, playing the guitar, wrestling down the back, having too many beers, all those sorts of things, and getting around a bus, you just gel together really quickly. And our record of our time when we're playing in Ashes Dust was just fantastic. And when we did in Australia in front of our families and friends, it was just unique. And I think we've always had a good camaraderie, and I think it was summed up in 2005 with Varney's team that the camaraderie and the sportsmanship between both teams really captured everyone's imagination. I think, yes, the skill on display from both teams in that series was fantastic, and it could have gone either way. England were the better side, and they deserved to win. But the camaraderie in that between the two sides, I really thought was fantastic. And those old days where people talk about having a beer in the dressing room after game, we used to do it. And I think it's ridiculous that they don't do it now. There is a place for sports. There's a place for sports science and all that. I agree with it. They should not be picking teams. I mean, we got to the stage in Australia last year. It was 1-1 against South Africa, and Peter Siddle, who's a fantastic bowler, didn't get selected because he might get injured. Now, have you ever heard anything so ridiculous in your entire life that someone might get injured? That's why we're not selecting him at 1-1 against South Africa. Give me a break. Sports science, go and just sit in the corner, give us your information, and we'll say thanks, but we'll select the team, not you guys.
You encouraged that camaraderie, Michael, didn't you? I heard you say it the other day.
I think we got discouraged in 2002-03 and we lost 4-1.
But you wanted it to make, because you wanted the Aussies to be not appear human, they are human. I didn't mean that as an insult, Shay.
No, you got it right the first time, chappers.
Thank you very much, Mike. To appear human to you guys, that they weren't some mythical creatures.
Well, I thought that in 2002-03 there were these mythical creatures because we weren't allowed to speak to you, Warnie. And then, in 2005, one of the things that I wanted the team to do is to almost get to know you a bit. So we knew you as Shane Warne, the person, rather than this guy that produced these terrific legsmen, same as McGrath, Gilchrist, Hayden, Langer. I wanted to know them all. So, we encouraged all the players, and we probably drank a little bit too much at times in the dressing room, but I felt it really helped our team. It helped us all to get to know you. And, when we were facing the likes of McGrath and yourself at the end of the 22 yards away, the banter was flying, but we also knew that you weren't that bad a bloke.
Yeah, well, thanks, Warnie. You weren't too bad either, mate.
It weren't that bad, and we kind of could create a bit of spirit in our dressing room because of that. It really helped us.
It's a super point, Varney, because I tell you, when I first started in 91-92 series against India, they had Kapil Dev, Dilip Vengsarkar. They had all these, wonderful players still playing. And I was, 2 weeks before that, I was them in the backyard. I was pretending to be Kapil Dev and all that in the backyard, bowling out swingers with my brother. And suddenly, Merv grabbed a six-pack of stubbies and said, "Come on, mate, we're going into the Indian dressing rooms." I said, I don't know about that. He said, no, come on, let's go. I said, rightio. So I sat there, and suddenly Ravi Shastri and Kapil Dev came up and said g'day and all those sorts of things. And suddenly, it was like you're just two guys having a chat. You weren't, even though when the next day and you stepped out in the field, you're still opponents, there was no edge. It was, you're still competitive and you still wanted to knock them over, but there wasn't that, it broke down some of the barriers and that sort of stuff, and I thought you were less intimidated by that. And I think it's one of the things that people are missing. You don't have to have a beer or anything either. There's nothing wrong with sitting for a young bloke having a water if he wants, or a Diet Coke, whatever he wants to drink, a Gatorade, Powerade, whatever the sports drink they want to drink. But we've just got to be careful that we don't everything is sports science, get food into you and all those sorts of things, and you forget the camaraderie, because if you're scared of a opponent or if you're intimidated by an opponent, the best advice I can give to you is go and sit next to him in the dressing room and have a chat to him.
Tough as all, Mike, did you find the 93 Australians intimidating?
Well, 93, I wouldn't say they were intimidating. They were a very good side, and we knew there was we had a good chance as well. I think it was, if you look back at the sides, it was reasonably well balanced until Mr. Warne decided he was going to make an impact on the teams. And having bowled them out for 289 at Old Trafford, we were 80 for 1 at the time, and then that sort of happened. But it was certainly a contest that was going to be a good contest, and I think that up until that particular ball, I suspect it was perhaps in our favour. I think we had some good players around, we had a good attack, and I think we all felt that it was going to be a good series. So we were quite happy at the time, but that was a scenario that we had, but unfortunately it got sort of slightly waylaid very early on in the series.
You always go out and play a game of cricket, don't you? Expecting a win, and if we play well, but then after that delivery, so to speak, and for the years then to come, it all of a sudden became a bit of a kind of like, well, a few of their guys have got to have an off day, and we've got to play well, and then we might do. And even though you don't want to admit that to yourself, it does kind of become like that. I mean, you look through the team sheets, don't you? Think, crikey, there's these fellas here, and Gilchrist coming in 7, and Warney's bowling well, and things like that. And you do have to sort of like think to yourself, well, they've got to have an off day really for us to win this series.
Did it change your life 20 years ago? Did it change your life?
Well, I suppose all of us cricketers, we just want to be cricketers, because we love the game and we're passionate. I think the one thing that did change my life, and it was, suddenly I had these photographers on my front lawn and following me everywhere I went, and they want to know so much about my life and who I was with, and that was a real eye-opener as a early 20-year-old, 22 or 23-year-old kid from Blackrock in Melbourne on the beach with surfboards and things, and suddenly in England, and all these people following me. I just couldn't believe it. I was just, running me off the road. It hasn't really bloody changed, actually, for 20 years now, to be fair. I've got to kick them off now, I do. But it really, I suppose, just opened my eyes to so many different things. And I suppose over the last 20-odd years, it's just... they don't train you for those sorts of things. There's no school you can go to. You try and do the best you can. You're going to make a few mistakes along the way, but I haven't changed one bit from the same bloke I was, that 20 years ago. So I'm still a cricket, love my family, and trying to do the best I can.
The late Shane Warne with Mark Chapman, Phil Tufnell and Michael Vaughan. And we'll really miss Shane around the commentary boxes when the Ashes starts at Edgbaston on the 16th of June.
The TMS Podcast from BBC Radio 5 Live.
Just smashed right into the World Trade Center. It was a big explosion of flames.
People Who Knew Me, a story about lies.
You used a terrorist attack to run away from your mess and fake your own death.
And love.
Are you proposing to me?
In the face of death.
I'm Paul. I'm 6 weeks into chemo, and I have no eyebrows.
An original drama for BBC Sounds.
Yeah, something's up.
Starring Rosamund Pike and Hugh Laurie.
Happy death anniversary.
People Who Knew Me. Listen on BBC Sounds.
You're listening to the TMS Podcast from BBC Radio 5 Live.
Every ball of the Ashes, the Women's Ashes, we're live on 5 Sports Extra with plenty of build-up coverage on BBC Sounds, including a series of programmes from the Ashes, where our chief cricket writer, Stefan Schemmelt, shared stories of England-Australia clashes, including Warne's partner in crime, Glenn McGrath.
I suppose at 2-1 down,
yeah,
I mean, he would have had to take something unbelievably severe to keep you off the pitch for that Oval Test match.
Yeah, so I was keen to play and help the team win this last Test match and retain the Ashes. And even going into that last day, England had played well. They were playing confidently, but that last day we still thought we were a chance to win the game. I picked up early wickets, got Michael Vaughan out caught behind, and then Ian Bell nicked the first ball. I think it might have been to either Warney or Mark Waugh in the slips, and all of a sudden the pressure's back on England. They don't have a huge lead at that time. And then Kevin Peterson comes out and Brett Lee bowls a sort of full wide delivery and KB edges it straight to Shane Warne. And Warney had great hands and he would have taken that catch 99 times out of 100. But it hit his hands, bounced up over his head and fell safely, and KP was on 0. So all these little things crept in, went against us, but because England had been playing well and they were playing confidently, it went in their favour, and KP went on. I think he got a big 100 and basically sealed our fate in that last day.
Maybe you've never reflected on this. Maybe you reflected as soon as the series ended. The 2 Test matches that England won, you didn't play in because of injuries, something beyond your control.
Yeah.
Have you thought about that? Did you? How did you deal with it?
Well, it is what it is. I've never been someone to deal with what if. I try to deal with what is, and that's the way it went. I like to think that I could have made a difference, But I'm not arrogant enough to say, yep, if I played, we would have won that series, because we may not have. The result may have been the same. So England were playing well. It was the first time that they really challenged the Australian team, and some of our batsmen had never been challenged before like that. They were playing incredibly well. Their bowling attack was sensational. So, I think after that match, I remember walking off the Oval, and Shane and myself were arm in arm waving to the crowd, because this was the last time we were going to play international cricket in the UK. And so it was a bittersweet moment walking off at the end. I can sit here now and say England were the better team that series.